Hi, it's Sylvester, and I wanted to respond to some myths about being non-binary. Myth number one is that you can't be non-binary and still be a man. This is not true. You can absolutely be a non-binary man, I know because I am one, and you can be a non-binary woman. In order to explain why that is to people who don't understand, I want to do it through metaphor. So this is not a very good metaphor, but it's the best metaphor I could come up with. So please bear with me here. Now, we like things to be simple. We like to take very complicated stuff and make it oversimplified. So rather than seeing gender as this very complicated spectrum, we want to see it as a binary. There's men and there's women, and that's it. Obviously, that's not the reality. That is not how the world works, but a lot of people want that to be how the world works. So I was thinking, what's another thing that we want to be binary? Well, the concept of being Canadian. If you had to put people into categories, either you are Canadian or you are not Canadian, you might think that that would be a simple task. But when you really think about it, a lot of people who consider themselves to be Canadians, who identify as Canadians, are not really 100% Canadian, unless you are absolutely 100% indigenous and native to this land. You're not really a Canadian. Like, I'm Canadian, I was born and raised here, but my ancestors aren't from here. I'm a European Canadian. So you might think, well, how can you be European and Canadian at the same time? Well, it's because the world's not a simple place. It's because things are complicated. And my identity is complicated. I am both a Canadian and a European. And if we look at the world as just Canadians and non-Canadians, I don't fall into that binary, and most Canadians don't fall into that binary. Like, let's say you are a proud Irish Canadian. You were born in Canada, but your family's from Ireland, and you're incredibly proud to be Irish. Now, you are a Canadian, but you are also Irish. You're both Canadian and not Canadian, because things aren't binary. You know what I mean? You can be both. You can be more than one thing. Your identity is complicated. And it's the same with gender. Like, I am a man, but I'm not truly 100% a man. Therefore, I'm non-binary and I'm a man. I can be both, because gender is complicated, just like many things in this world. Next myth is that non-binary people just can't decide what gender they are. To bring it back to the same metaphor, that's like saying this Irish Canadian can't decide whether or not they're Canadian. It's like, well, they are Canadian, but they're also Irish. It's like, well, you have to pick one. You pick a side, pick a team. Either you're Canadian or you're not Canadian. It's like, well, no, I can be both Canadian and not Canadian. I mean, technically, if I had to pick a side, I guess I would choose to identify as Canadian, but that wouldn't be entirely correct. That wouldn't properly describe my identity. Just like if I had to choose between man or woman, I would choose man, but that wouldn't be an accurate representation of who I actually am and how I actually identify. The next non-binary myth is that non-binaries just want attention. I mean, I'm a bad example because I do want attention. That's why I have a YouTube channel, but I didn't come out as non-binary for attention. And the vast majority of non-binary people do not identify as non-binary just because they want attention. I don't know how to convince people that that's the truth, but trust me, that is the truth. Most non-binary people are not being non-binary just for attention, especially because a lot of the attention that non-binary people get is not positive attention. It is very much so harassment, bullying, being made fun of, even being the victims of hate crimes. Like, being non-binary is not something that you do for attention. It's just ridiculous. Non-binary people aren't doing it for attention. I guarantee maybe there are some out there who do identify as non-binary for attention, but they are absolutely the exception and not the rule. The next myth is that non-binary people are just jumping on a bandwagon. Being non-binary is the quote-unquote cool thing to do these days, and therefore, as soon as it stops being the cool thing to do, all of these people who identify as non-binary are suddenly going to stop identifying as non-binary. Now, I have no doubt in my mind that there are some people out there who identify as non-binary because they are jumping on a bandwagon, and I don't think that that's wrong. I don't think that those people are bad or evil. I do think that that happens, but I think the vast majority of people who identify as non-binary genuinely are actually non-binary. And the last myth I want to talk about is specific to me because I am a trans masculine non-binary person. People think that I just want to detransition, but I'm too embarrassed to admit that I want to detransition. That is absolutely not true. Now, I wanted to put it out there that I don't see anything wrong with detransitioning because we are all on a journey learning about ourselves, learning to understand ourselves, and sometimes we get it wrong. Sometimes we think we are one way, and then it turns out that's not our truth. That's not who we really are. And so there are some people out there who come out as trans and transition, and then realize later on that that was not the right thing for them to do, and they detransition, and I think that that is absolutely okay. You're not hurting anyone. These people who detransition are not hurting anyone unless they become one of those trans people who detransition and then go around shitting on the trans community and talking about how being trans is a woke mind virus or something. Like, those detransitioned people suck. But for the most part, it's okay to make mistakes. Again, these people aren't hurting anyone. Detransitioning doesn't hurt anyone. And you know what? I am constantly learning more about myself and learning about how I identify and who I am on the inside. And maybe I am going to detransition at some point in the future. I don't know. I don't know the future. I can't say for sure. But where I am right now, I'm pretty certain that I'm not going to because I don't want to detransition. I feel comfortable where I am. I like being on hormone replacement therapy. I like the fact that I had chest surgery. I like the fact that I transitioned, and I would not give this up for anything. Like, genuinely, I'm so much more comfortable in my own skin now that I have transitioned. Being non-binary does not mean that I am not transmasculine. It doesn't mean that I am not a trans man. It doesn't mean that I should have remained as I was before I transitioned. It simply means that how I see myself and how I label my identity is different than how I labeled myself a few months ago, you know? Anyways, that's all. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day. Stay frosty. Bye.